2014 Washougal City Council meeting. Would you please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Rose, could you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Boger.
Here.
Councilmember Plinsky.
Here.
Councilmember Greenlee.
Here.
Councilmember Lindsay. Councilmember McDaniel.
Here.
Councilmember Shoemaker.
Here.
Councilmember Freeman.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Lindsay did let us know that she was unavailable this evening.
Mr. Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that we excuse Councilmember Lindsay.
There are no objections, so ordered. We do have a proclamation this evening for National Community Development Block Grant Week, which is going to be a mouthful, so bear with me. Whereas the Community Development Block Grant Program has operated since 1974 to provide local governments with the resources required to meet the needs of persons of low and moderate income, and whereas August 22nd is the 40th anniversary of the Community Development Block Grant Program, and whereas the Community Development Block Grant funds are used by all cities and towns and neighborhood-based nonprofit organizations throughout Clark County to address pressing neighborhood and social service needs, whereas the City of Washougal has undertaken 25 Community Development Block Grant activities, and whereas the City of Washougal and other local governments have clearly demonstrated the capacity to administer and customize the CDBG program to identify and resolve pressing local problems such as neighborhood and social service needs, flood relief, job creation and retention, physical redevelopment, and affordable housing. And whereas the week of April 21 through 26 has been reserved in recognition and appreciation for the Community Development Block Grant Program, now therefore be it resolved that I, Sean Gard, Mayor of the City of Washougal, do hereby proclaim the week of April 21st through the 26th as National Community Development Block Grant Week. And with that, are there, I know I have one amendment to the agenda, which will be under new business, item D, which will be updates from the Finance Department. Are there any other amendments to the agenda?
Yeah, we have, there's two purposes for the exec session.
Yep, excuse me, and then there's also adding an executive session after council member comments in regards to litigation and property acquisition. Are there any other amendments to the agenda? Okay, hearing none, are there any members of the public that would like to address council? Good evening, Marilyn.
Good evening, everybody. Beautiful summer day. I hope it lasts. Last year, if you may remember, I made a complaint to the code enforcement people person who then told the person about whom I was complaining who had done the complaint. And she has since been very difficult as a neighbor across the street. It's been really a problem. I complained to Mr. Scott, who referred me to Chief Mitchell, and from whom I learned that there is no action taken unless there is a complaint. So that means that whatever you do on the street, nothing happens unless you complain about it. I have had some reason to complain for at least a year or so now about other items, but I'm afraid to do so because of your policy, particularly with this neighbor that I'm mentioning, who not only has a hot temper, but has a live-in boyfriend who just purchased a gun. So I guess I'm here saying that, first of all, I don't think that the rest of the citizens in this town should have to live in fear of making a complaint about what's going on with their neighbors. And secondly, I would hope that you would give some consideration to changing your policy.
Thank you, Marilyn. I would certainly encourage you, if you've got items that need to go to the attention, different policies are different things. When it comes to the police department, it's typically the laws that prevail, not policies. But if you've got items that need to come to their attention, I would urge you to not hesitate to contact them.
Well, if Ms. Montgomery is going to go and tell people who's doing the complaining, I'm not going to do that. I feel afraid to do that.
And it certainly is within the chief's purview whether or not she makes that information available. So,
Thank you.
you bet. Can I give you a call later?
Surely.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the public that would like to address council? Okay. Brings us to consent agenda. This evening, there are 6 items on your consent agenda. Your workshop minutes from March 10th, 2014, your council minutes of March 10th, 2014, regular accounts payable claims in the amount of $505,688.11, your payroll claims in the amount of $168,705.41, Agenda Bill 20-14, in authorization for the mayor to sign an extension of memorandum of understanding with the International Association of Firefighters, and Agenda Bill 21-14, in authorization for the mayor to sign a memorandum of understanding with the International Association of Firefighters. I will be taking item F off of the consent agenda and onto the regular agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that the consent agenda items A, B, C, D, and E be approved as read.
Hearing no objection, so ordered. Going to Agenda Bill 21-14, a memorandum of understanding with the International Association of Firefighters. Council, typically, as you know, we try and put things onto your consent agenda that are routine, that are items that we've workshopped, we've talked about different ways, really are housekeeping items or items to set schedules for the future and that type of thing. With Agenda Bill 2114, though, I certainly, and City Administrator Scott, certainly we do not want the significance of this agenda bill to be lost on anyone. As you know, we've been in a 3.5-year, going on 4-year consolidation discussion, trial consolidation, and now moving towards full consolidation and a professional services agreement or intergovernmental, local intergovernmental agreement with the City of Camas to provide our firefighting services. This document, to a large degree, with the signatures of myself, Mayor Higgins, and Adam Bryce, the new union president, really sets all of that, sets in motion what happens with all of our fire personnel that are currently employees of the City of Washougal. So I want to make sure that everyone, one, recognizes the importance of what this little innocuous piece of paper is, and the fact that it really is not something that is a normal housekeeping item for any jurisdiction, certainly not the City of Washougal. So we would urge your passing of the agenda bill and authorizing myself to sign the agreement. I understand, Adam, it's been voted on by your union already.
Question.
Yes.
Is this the last, excuse me, the last approval we have to put the whole agreement into place?
No, I believe there's a final approval of the recommendations out of JPAC, correct?
This is the last item that would come before the Washougal City Council. The Camas City Council has to approve a budget, a supplemental budget that puts everything in motion. There's we have an update actually a little bit later on, and we can walk through all of that.
And JPAC is meeting a week from tonight.
Correct.
Yeah.
On the other side, Camus actually has to hire all of our personnel as well, so it's kind of one of those last pieces in there.
But as far as we're concerned, this is pretty much it.
Pretty much with the agenda bills that we had towards the end of the year that actually called for the consolidation and approved that side of it, and this one in how the employees will be treated, taken over, and absorbed into the Camus organization.
Right.
Organizations, both the city and the union.
Right. And I think, just as a little more staff report on this, one of the things I know was very important to the mayor and to the council was that the Washougal employees be treated fairly and well in a transition as they would become Camus employees. And we wouldn't put this document in front of you unless we felt that that was indeed the case. And I think the fact that the group has approved the document as well is evidence that they feel that they're being treated fairly in terms of that transition. And then, as the mayor mentioned, we didn't want to let this opportunity pass without acknowledging the personnel that are in the Washougal Fire Department, and that this document is going to affect that transfer. And we appreciate their support in the process and know that they'll continue to serve this community well as part of the consolidated group. And I believe Adam is prepared to just share a couple words to mark the occasion as well.
Good evening.
Thank you, Mayor, and council members, and Mr. Scott. The employees that came over from Washougal have been excellent to work with. Over the last 3 years, we've gone from 2 separate departments to essentially a single department with a lot of cohesion between all the members involved, and this is the final step that will allow us to continue on and provide the high quality of service that we all desire to provide our community. So we appreciate all the effort that's been put in by everybody in order to bring us to this culmination, and we look forward to moving on and getting better every day. So, thank you.
You bet.
Mr. Mayor, has a motion been made?
Has not.
I move for approval of the agreement.
Second.
I have a question.
I've got a motion and a second to authorize the mayor to sign the memorandum of understanding. Paul?
We workshopped a document at least much like this. Is this changed from that?
No, we discussed this in executive session, and this document is essentially that same document. There were a couple of typo-type things that the council had pointed out. We corrected those. But yes, it's the document that.
But, okay, so other than the typos, this is the same document that was discussed?
Right. You did ask for a clarification in the last paragraph about the expiration. It needed to be clarified a little bit, so I consider that a typo type thing as well. There's no substantive changes since the last time you saw it. Right.
Thank you.
Other questions from council members? Okay, I've got a motion and a second to authorize the mayor to sign the memorandum of understanding. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Brings us to new business items, Agenda Bill 22-14, public hearing in regard to miscellaneous code amendments, second round. Mitch?
Thank you, Your Honor, Council. The Agenda Bill 2214, as the mayor said, is for miscellaneous code amendments round 2 from 2013. There are 11 proposed amendments. They add new language relating to public use and public use limited. It changes law to be consistent with state law and mostly clarifies language and corrects errors. At the March 10th work session with council, we went over the proposed amendments. I wasn't going to go back over those, but I did want to touch on the definition of public use. At that work session, staff brought forward a definition of public use limited, which further limited the definition of public use to be only for the city of Washougal and related to parks and utilities. I took that definition back to the Community Development Committee. We met on that, and they made one other clarification that it would be only applicable to neighborhood parks, not all parks within the city. And so I'd like to share that definition with you. Is public use limited means any building, structure, or use owned and/or operated by the city of Washougal, which is necessary to serve a public purpose and limited to neighborhood parks and water and sanitary sewerage, storage, intake, collection, treatment, and pumping facilities. So that is the proposed language that is in the ordinance before you this evening, as well as the applicability of it within the zoning code. Now for the necessary items for the hearing, joint notice of application and likely SEPA determination was distributed on August 30th, 2013. There was no comments received on that. Planning Commission held a work session and hearing on September 24th, 2013. Again, no comments were received at that time. City Council, as mentioned, had a work session on March 10th. And again, Community Development Committee met on March 6th and March 14th to discuss the proposed amendments. And notice of tonight's hearing was published on March 14th, 2014. The recommended action is to hold a public hearing to take public testimony, and if council desires, make a motion to read the ordinance by title only and pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual manner.
Thank you, Mitch. With that, I will open the public hearing and ask any members of the public that would like to speak to Agenda Bill 2214 to please come to the microphone and give your name and address and your testimony. Second call for any members of the public that would like to speak to the agenda bill item, miscellaneous code amendments. And this is the third and final call for any members of the public that would like to address Agenda Bill 2214, miscellaneous code amendments. Okay, seeing no members of the public that would like to testify, I will close the public hearing. Council?
Mr. Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that the ordinance be read by title only.
Hearing no objection, so ordered.
An ordinance amending portions of Washougal Municipal Code Title 15 Building and Construction, Title 16 Environmental Regulations, Title 17 Land Divisions, and Title 18 Zoning.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual manner.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second to pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual manner. Any council discussion?
I have a question. Just to refresh everybody's recollection, what's the significance of the limited use definition?
The significance of it would be that public use is more broadly allows much more uses. It allows the state, federal government, and to use any of those uses within the residential districts, and it identifies them as a conditional use. The public use limited definition would only be applicable to the city of Washougal, and again, only apply to neighborhood parks and utilities, making it a public or permitted use, outright.
And what's the significance of requiring a conditional use permit?
We need a public hearing. The standards and applicable standards are identical. It says that we have a public hearing instead of an administrative review.
And the public hearing would be before?
Hearing examiner.
Okay, and without the, if we don't include these in the limited use, there would be a public hearing required for each of these before the hearing examiner.
Correct.
Would neighbors who are concerned about these particular uses, even though they're defined as limited use, have some avenue to express their concerns with the city?
Absolutely. Site plan review is required for any application. We provide public notice to everybody within 500 feet of any proposed site that this would be undertaken.
I would also add that since these are our projects, our neighborhood parks and our utilities, as part of our project management process for doing the capital, we work with adjacent property owners and neighbors to make sure that we're putting in a good project and that will blend well in the neighborhood.
Now, the Planning Commission considered this issue, and this isn't exactly what they recommended.
No, the Planning Commission considered whether or not public uses, the broad definition of public use should be a permitted use outright. And they felt that, no, it should stay as a conditional use. While there was discussion about a further breakdown of a definition, we didn't go into this great of detail on that definition.
Has this change of scope been, have they considered this yet, or?
No, they wouldn't have considered this, as this was a recommendation made at the time of your hearing.
You did very well with my Socratic method.
Planning Commission did pass the rest of it unanimously.
Right,
though.
right.
Other council questions? Okay, I've got a motion and a second to pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual manner. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. That brings us to an update on fire consolidation.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. We wanted to provide a consolidation update for you this evening since the MOUs were on consent. We thought we'd give you an update as to the progress to date. As Councilmember Boger alluded to, the JPAC committee is meeting next Monday night, March 31st. Some other important dates to remember, and then Chief is going to make a few comments as well, I believe, or be available to answer questions as well. So just a real brief update. The MOUs were on consent and authorized this evening, authorized the mayor to sign. So that's going to trigger the personnel transfer we have on target for May 1st. And then we're also working on a lease agreement. We've drafted one and have that to, our attorney has reviewed it. It's to Camus for their attorney to review for the lease of our station. The JPAC committee will talk about the budget on Monday night. And then there's various other issues. Ooh, it went black. Okay. Other items as well that they're going to discuss, such as the cash reserve discussion. Kathy's finance director for Camus has made some recommendations. We've been working on that together for a recommendation to the committee on what the minimum cash reserve should be, how long of a phase-in that should be over, because obviously having all that cash up front would be a financial burden for both cities, as this is a separate fund away from the rest of the funds of the city. So there's considerations there that the committee will review. And then the capital fund, the interlocal calls to that being set up by the end of the year. So that'll be one of the discussions as well on Monday night. The dates, again, the meeting's Monday night, March 31st. Camus is going to pass the consolidated budget sometime in April at one of their meetings after the committee meets. We've scheduled the employees to be transferred as of May 1st. Currently, as of January 1 of this year through April 30th, we've been paying for all of our fire department expenses through our payable process. As the transfer hadn't occurred yet, everything triggers off of the employee transferring over. So we'll pay our bills directly through April 30th, and then at that point, we're planning on having Camus pay all the bills, and then we would start our monthly payments to them based on the approved budget. We won't pay for the full year of payments to them. We'll pay, I believe, 8 months, so May through December, with the thought process being we've paid for the expenses for the beginning of the year, so we'll prorate the remainder of the year. With that, I was going to let Chief Winhart make a few comments and then open it up for questions.
Good evening, Chief.
Mayor, thank you. Council, I don't have any specific comments, just to say that everything has been moving as planned, on target, very much with the assistance from the local, from the volunteer organization, from our elected officials in both cities. We've managed to stay on track with completing everything, as Jennifer said, by May 1st for the employee transfer date. Camus Council is going to be considering the passage of the new budget, I believe, at the first meeting in April. So that'll be coming up here very shortly. It's we're down to just the last few days of this, aren't we, after several years? And so we're very pleased to be where we're at, and I personally want to thank this group very much for helping us get to where we are. I'm here mostly to answer any questions that you may have for me tonight.
Council? I've noticed our volunteers are actually wearing the Camas-Washougal Fire Department apparel now as well. Some members,
Pretty soon, that's all they'll be able to get, so.
unless they do otherwise.
There you go.
Any questions from
When
council?
will all the branding be done on equipment, uniforms?
Trucks, emblems, shoulder patches?
That's in progress, and we're waiting basically for the transfer of personnel, and we're basically waiting for that May 1st date. We don't want to undertake a lot of expensive switchover on stuff like that until we're just absolutely sure that date is come and gone, so just playing it safe.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, do you have any estimates of the cost savings to date since we've had the trial consolidation?
I'll have to look to Jennifer for that a little more.
I know that we've been tracking the overtime per month, and I don't have the recent numbers offhand, but I know that in the 2013 year-end numbers, the savings from the fire department was roughly $200,000 for us alone. So for the system as a whole, I'm not sure, but definitely with the savings on overtime last year, it was a huge benefit.
And I know in Camas, the EMS fund overtime was about where it should be. However, the fire general fund overtime was about, last time I remember looking at it, was about 50% expended. And so significant savings there as well on the Camas side. And people have always asked us throughout this whole process, how much of that we can attribute to the merger. And I always tell them that I can't say a specific amount of it is tied to the merger, all of it is, or none of it is. I just have a feeling that there's probably quite a lot of it is, but then there's other things that go into that factor in, like people are healthier. We didn't have as many people injured last year and stuff like that. So it's hard to put your finger on it, but I think that some of the significant savings that we experienced last year in both Camas and Washougal definitely had something to do with the merger.
I think the last time that we presented an update with those estimates might have been late third quarter, early fourth quarter last year. I think if you look in the Dropbox, you could be reminded of a presentation. We could provide.
I thought it was a pretty small amount when I read that number, but I think it's bigger than that.
Well, I think certainly one of the items, and sometimes it gets lost in the shuffle in there, but it certainly comes back, as far as I'm concerned, it certainly comes back to the consolidation, was the retirement of the two firefighters and a captain and a firefighter that we had this last year. Under normal circumstances, we would have gone out, we would have likely promoted someone to captain from within and then looked to hire to replace those firefighter positions at that point. There's some period in there where we're going to save some money anyway, just during the hiring process, all of that. In the case of the consolidated department, though, there was, I won't say plenty of, there was enough depth that we didn't need to do any of that at all within that portion of it. So that's one of the reasons that we can look towards the majority of that $200,000 in savings, both for overtime and for the retirements. One of them truly a retirement, the other one an unfortunate retirement.
We haven't eliminated those positions, but we've been able, with the safer positions that have been in place, the chief's been able to orchestrate an accommodation of those two vacancies until we see what happens with the latest application. I don't know if there's an update on that, but.
No, we don't have any thus far.
Well, long term, it will mean that a lot of, when separately run departments, you'd have to replace more positions, as the mayor was saying. In this case, we don't with a merged department, and so there will be savings for the whole system.
Yeah, and our intent has never been to not replace those positions. I mean, we definitely need all the positions that we currently have, but what we've been doing is sort of holding on to those positions right now, as David said, to see what happens with our recent Safer Grant renewal, to see whether we get that or not, and then to consider our options at that point. So I don't want council to think that we've kept those positions vacant to purposely eliminate them or to get rid of them. That's not our intent at all.
No, and in fact, the budgets include those positions in there, so. The bench is definitely deeper, though.
Yes.
You know, it was only 2010 when Washougal was a standalone department, we had, well, out of 9 employees, we had at least 4, it may have been 5 at one point, that were out on disability, medical, on and on and on, and we didn't have the anesthesia is still affecting my brain. Chief, remind me, our reciprocal agreement or use of personnel,
Oh, you mean as far as transferring personnel between the groups or something?
even countywide.
Like a mutual aid?
Mutual aid, we had a standing mutual aid with both Camas and East County Fire and
Okay.
Rescue because we were at such low staffing levels. We did not have people on the ground, so this consolidation certainly has helped in many regards to manpower and overtime. Other questions in regards to the fire consolidation?
See you Monday.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, that brings us to item C, proposed amendment to Council Rules of Procedure 1.3 in regard to attendance and excused absences.
Mayor, if it's okay, maybe we could have Jen go over the items she had from the workshop that we didn't get to.
I've got those right after this item.
Okay, I'll do this quickly. This is not an item for your action tonight, council. This is draft resolution and draft language around your rules. As you know, you've had some conversation over the past couple of workshops informally about your rules with respect to council member absences, notification, and the approval criteria. And you asked that Don, our attorney, and myself, and Councilman Boger actually take a look at that and come up with some language to propose to you. And because we wanted to get this to you as quickly as we could, but we had a very full workshop, so we are indulging in your meeting to basically workshop this item tonight. So in your packet, you can see very simple amendments proposed to section 1.3 of your rules. And very straightforward. It gets very specific about who the designees of the mayor would be for notification, to include the clerk, the deputy clerk, myself, or another of the council members. And just to put names on all of that, that's in order: Jen, Rose, myself, and then any one of you.
Isn't the
And
mayor
then-
still on the list? Okay.
He's first.
Yeah, yes, the mayor's still there,
Trying to
right?
get to the item here.
And then it requires that whomever is contacted by the council member that's going to be absent, that they convey the message to the chair, which is the current language. And then the criteria really now it's a criterion. The criterion for excusing pursuant to your rules would be for good cause. And I will turn to Don and/or Councilman Boger if they want to add any commentary about how they came up. Really, they came up with this language, and I just prepared this document for you.
Just basically, I think council wanted to expand the people that could be given notice of potential absence, and so we added a council member and we added other people on staff. And then as far as the basis for the being excused, we looked back at the state statute, and I felt that since council was required to affirmatively excuse a council member, there ought to be some standard for that, some discretion ought to be given. And so I think Councilman Boger came up with a good cause. It's a fairly generic legal term that's
Good cause basically means substantial reason.
substantial reason.
Yeah.
For,
yeah.
which I think council can exercise their discretion. If a person is one time out of 2 years, it's not going to take a whole lot to excuse them. But if they repeat it over time, then you're going to want to look at it a little closer. So good cause can be expanded there. So hopefully that's what council had in mind, and that's the proposal that we're making.
Council comments, suggestions, questions? Council?
I'm just surprised that for good cause, what you say, it effectively means
Substantial reason.
substantial reason. I like that, but I just remember that being a big point of discussion the other night. So it's
It's
not defined any more than it was, I don't think. Although I'm,
well, it should be flexible, I think. I mean, if someone who, as the city attorney said, is, misses one or two council meetings for vacation,
sickness.
well, sickness is, I think you're more flexible on something like that, but this is my own
I see what
criteria.
you mean.
But, if they miss 5 meetings a year for vacations, then I start thinking you're kind of stretching the concept of good cause. But if you miss one, probably not. I mean, it's a flexible kind of thing.
The language that's there is actually, the previous language is kind of out of the AWC handbook of what's recommended. So we've expanded that a little bit based on your proposals, your ideas, so hopefully it's going to work for you.
What does state statute say?
State statute says that that it has to be affirmatively excused, but doesn't give any basis. My reasoning was that if it has to come before council to be excused, then some discretion has to be given as to whether to excuse or not to excuse. So some reason, whether it's, an illness or vacation or sudden event that comes up that you couldn't be anticipated, that those would probably be good cause. But that's the discretion that you would have to exercise in making your decision. Obviously, you know that 3 unexcused in a row, and you're not a council member anymore.
Right.
So it is an important concept to have council come before council and have some kind of notice given so that council can exercise their discretion.
Okay, Joe?
So basically, we're being told that we do have to state the cause? I mean, a generic answer like, I got called away, or I have a conflict of interest.
Again, I think in my mind, it would depend on how often you do it.
Okay.
That'd be part of what I'd weigh.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a conflict of interest is not an unexcused absence.
See, that's what I mean. See, this is going to be at the whim of the council of the night that we have to excuse it.
Oh, that you wouldn't participate because you had a conflict of interest?
Right.
Yeah, that's a different thing than not being here. Yeah, that's a totally different thing.
It's not an absence, that's not an excused or
Right.
otherwise.
No, if you have a conflict of interest and you can't
You show up and then you
participate
don't, basically, you should still show up, but you shouldn't participate in the meeting.
Let me restate that, a conflict.
Yeah.
You have a conflict, something unexpected conflict in timing came up and you couldn't make this, you chose to go somewhere else.
It would depend upon,
So are we expected to report what that is in more detail? I'm just,
I think it,
This is a discussion for you all as council members. These are your
Exactly.
rules.
if it's personal, if someone called, if I was the one who was contacted, and someone said, I can't be there, and the person said, it's personal, I'd accept that.
okay.
Unless it, happened like 6 meetings in a row. And then I start wondering.
If I'm the person that any of you contact, I'm not going to ask you what it's for. I believe that you, all 7 of you, are big people.
Exactly.
You understand the responsibility that you signed on for, and you understand that if you can, you're here. And if you're not, you're not. So, Jennifer?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I really don't think that we should sit here in judgment. I mean, we obviously are going to be voting on whether or not to excuse our fellow council members, but, as Councilmember Freeman says, for a good cause can really be interpreted in too many different ways by each individual. And so maybe it's not a good idea to put it in the rules.
Well, I was sort of playing devil's advocate, situations that are realistic, that have actually
Right.
happened.
I mean, in state law, that it doesn't say any of these things. It just says that they have to be formally excused. It doesn't talk about who to contact. It doesn't talk about any of that stuff, so.
I would be just as happy without the phrase "for good cause." I think it's really up to, quite frankly, the whim of the council, whether we excuse someone or not.
Whereupon it pays to play nicely with others.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to disagree with my colleague here. I think it's incumbent upon people on the council to sit in judgment on their colleagues. I think we're the only ones who can, short of the electorate. And that only comes around infrequently. And we've had situations in the past where we've had conduct that was unprofessional. We've also had people who missed meetings. I can remember one who missed 2 and was coming up on 3. And this was before I was on the council. And he decided to come back so he wouldn't miss the 3rd meeting. I see no problem with using the good cause standard. I think it's an excellent one. I think it's up to us to make that judgment, and I think it's up to us to sit in judgment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And I'll point out the good cause concept is, you find it throughout Washington law, court rules. Judges are often mandated. They can do this upon showing of good cause. And it's a flexible concept, and I've basically told the council how I would interpret it, and it would depend upon how often people use a particular vague explanation.
Good news is you don't have to decide tonight. It's a
No.
discussion item, and
Right.
it'll be back
That's
before
good.
you, so.
I appreciate you taking the time to discuss it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. Moving on to items items we didn't get to on the workshop in regard to Finance Department. And Jennifer, I apologize because I do not have the other agenda here to know the order, so let's start with petty cash.
All right. Thank you. Good evening again. And I've worked through these 4 issues with the Finance Committee last week. What is today? Today's Monday. Last week, to get their input before bringing them forward. On the petty cash, it's the one that's titled Resolution 837 at the top in your packet. That is the old resolution. I will be presenting a new one for the packet next week. But I want to strike the line that says throughout the document that says increasing the maximum per expense payout to $75. We do license our rigs when we first purchase them, and it's about $50. So it does, I know the resolution calls to that as an example expense, but there's other examples to where, at least $150 if you want to put a limit on it. Our current controls are such to where we wouldn't need a limit, which the Finance Committee agreed to as well. It's a petty cash fund. There's $1,000. We have a process in place. Therefore, we'd like to strike and just get rid of the maximum per expense item.
Any questions from council?
I just wanted to say that, yes, Finance Committee did discuss this at some length with Director Forsberg, and we agree. In fact, we actually proposed that we could strike that limit.
Any other discussion? Okay. Moving from that on to local government investment pools.
Okay, the local government investment pool is where we invest our funds it's very liquid. We can get funds back the next day should we need them. It earns the massive percentages that we present in our quarterly reports. But it is important, and it is a good tool to have. They've requested that we they're asking all their clients to redo the resolution. So essentially, they gave us the template, and I put Washougal in where necessary. So it's just to re-up to be able to participate in the local government investment pool.
Questions, Jennifer?
Have we ever passed such a resolution to participate before?
I wasn't able to find it, but there is paperwork that we've signed that gives us the authorization to do so. We do have resolutions that authorize the finance director to do investments in code. So I guess that'd be an ordinance, sorry.
Okay.
But no, I wasn't able to find a prior one, so that could be why they're doing them as well, is because they're realizing that they're not there.
Questions too. Okay, awesome. And another quick question. This is a template, you say?
Yes.
So they're requiring that we name the authorized individual?
Correct.
Yourself?
We have to fill out the paperwork, so I would assume we would redo the resolution should the name change in the paperwork as well.
Right, right. That's something that we'd really have to be on top of.
We can't
because
authorize the position, it has to be
it
specific.
has to be a name.
I can ask before the next meeting. Like I said, it just said name and title in the draft.
Yeah, it's because the burden of notifying them, the state treasurer, of course, to remove, say, your name or whoever's name we put on there, and to replace it. Otherwise, it would fall on the city, the administration, and if it falls through the cracks, that person is continually authorized to withdraw funds. So, it's just it's
Right. It would be between designated accounts. I don't know that they would add an account, but that's a very good point. So I will contact them and find out if we can modify that.
Other questions? Okay, moving along to change funds.
All right. We have not increased our change fund. Those are the funds that we use at the front desk when we receive utility payments. And the police department has a change fund as well for fingerprinting and those sorts of expenses. So essentially, we would like to increase the total amount of change funds to $600 citywide, increasing finance to $250, and the police department to $200, just to have adequate change on hand to be able to do our daily cash receipting. And again, the finance committee was in support of that.
Jennifer?
Sorry, I have another question about that. Just what types of transactions do you do that requires the cash in the?
We receipt the utility payments.
So it's mostly utility payments?
Our dog licenses, dog fines.
Any
Finance
payments for?
is receipting for community development. We're accepting payments for their permits, so we're actually utilizing the community development funds on that side, on our side of the office as well, to be able to have the segregation of duties between the two drawers.
So we're obligated to have cash for transactions, so
Correct, and with the
whatever would be.
increase in the utility
to the city.
payments, people are paying, there are quite a few folks that come in and pay in cash, so it's necessary to have on hand to be able to make change.
Any other questions?
I'd just say that the Finance Committee spent some time talking to Jennifer about this, and these numbers made great sense to us.
Great, thank you.
Sounds fine to me.
Okay, moving to NSF charges.
Okay. We, in reviewing the code, we have had a very low NSF fee. We're not covering the cost that we're currently being charged by the bank when we get a notification that a payment has been NSF or a closed account, those types of things. So I talked it over with the Finance Committee. Depending on if it's a check, Wells Fargo charges us roughly $22 per transaction. Then we have to reverse the payment, send the letter, contact the utility customer, or whatever the customer the payment pertained to. If it's a credit card transaction, we get charged $25, and then we have the same process in place as well. So I brought it forward to the Finance Committee and let them know that Richfield charges $25, Camas charges us $30, and Battleground actually charges $38. And they were in support of actually charging a $40 fee to cover the cost of the NSF and the staff time to redo the transaction and to assist as a deterrent. If the fee's too low, people are going to just write the check knowing, or could possibly write the check knowing that it's not going to clear, just to get their water turned back on, or just to get that payment made on time to not incur fees. Whereas if we raise the fee, that might deter them from doing those things and allow us to work with them. We do the payment arrangements. We really do try to bend over backwards to get folks help with the assistance program if they qualify, and those types of things. So I'm bringing it forward in support of the $40 charge. And again, that was with the Finance Committee's blessing, and open it for discussion.
Do we have to justify charging more than the bank charges us because we're essentially making money on the transaction.
Well, we're not making
We still
money.
wouldn't break even.
We're not making money.
On the transaction, and it'll also allow some room for, the fees go up annually typically, so it'll allow some room in there too for future fees to increase. But we can definitely justify that it costs us more than that to process it, work with people, call, follow up. Sometimes we have to send the crew back out because, they'll give you a payment knowing, maybe they don't know, or maybe things happen. Let me qualify that with
If they know, it's criminal.
my fraud hat on. We can't prove that they knew.
The problem is you can't prove that they.
Correct.
Yeah.
We can't prove that they know, but it's very suspect. We have to send the crew back out to shut them off on a different day, because we have various days that we plan everything out. So it's definitely not making money, but it's a step in the right direction to help deter folks and let them ask for help, and we can help them in other ways.
Okay, Joe?
So you say the fees go up every year usually. You're talking about the NSF charges?
Correct, from the banks.
And if the bank charges go up, we would up our rates?
If it exceeded the $40, I would probably bring it back to the finance committee and ask for their recommendation and then bring it back forward.
Seems like we would just raise that automatically if they raise theirs, because we're trying to cushion the fact that we're having to send crews out, staff time, et cetera.
We talked
Trying to
about that
recoup
with the finance committee, but wanted to have the fee clearly stated. So we had talked about doing whatever the bank charges plus $15, but then it varies depending on the source of the payment. So it kind of got a little confusing. So that's where we settled on the $40 at this point.
So we just need to revisit it
More frequently than
frequently.
1997.
Yeah,
Last time we looked at
I
it.
suppose.
Yeah,
Fees have
the last
changed
time I wrote
somewhat.
we actually talked about this quite a bit, and what it came down to was that there's a huge advantage to being able to put a sign up that says NSF check or return charge $40, as opposed to whatever it costs us plus 15. What does that mean? People who are going to write an NSF check aren't going to understand that. So we just said there's a big advantage to putting a very clear number on it.
Yeah, it's a good plan. I just think we should have some automatic calendar reminder for you to say, let's visit this again.
Oh, they certainly see it as they come through and on the monthly statements as those are reconciled, now that they are actually reconciled.
Good thing. And we do work with folks. We had an instance where an individual had to close her account, so we didn't get notification until the check came back from the bank as a closed account. And in the time that the bank kicked it back to us and we were getting ready to contact her, she came in because she had to close her account for fraud purposes. So she remembered to come back and say, I wrote this check here, I'm so sorry, it's not going to clear. And so we didn't charge in that instance. I mean, we do have some discretion, but definitely want to make sure that in cases where it's necessary, we can recoup some cost.
It's good.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. With that, we are at the second opportunity in the agenda for any members of the public that would like to address council. Okay, that worked quick. Under Mayor's Report, I have just a couple of items for you. There is, just a reminder to council, there is an AWC risk management training session this Thursday evening out in La Center. Jennifer, were we able to, this is risk management doing it, but I know they have some of the open meetings items on the agenda that I saw, but does that qualify for what the legislature just passed for council members now have to take mandatory class on that?
I can find out for sure. I'm not certain.
Wait a second. We have to take a mandatory class on something?
Yes, you do. Open meetings and
Oh,
the Open Meeting Act and all kinds of good
Actually,
things.
it's more on records, I think, is the big deal.
Public Open Meetings Act.
Public Records Act, too?
Yep, so, just a reminder, that
How much
one,
time do we have to do that before you take?
I don't actually even know. That was one of those items that passed through quietly in the, in our
Today's my
legislature.
doing legal education reporting year, too. I wonder if I can combine the two.
Get double credit, yeah.
Yeah. That workshop that is Thursday evening is free to you as council members, since we're a member of the risk pool. So that is out there. Let Rose know if you would like to attend that. The other item for your future calendar is April 17th. The school district is having a town hall meeting from 6 to 9 p.m. up at the high school commons. So if you would like to attend that, they have a working group that has been doing some work on future needs of the schools and direction of schools and curriculum, and they would like to roll that out that evening and be available for questions and whatnot.
I'm sorry, times again?
Facilities.
April 17th from 6 to 9.
Would you
Items-
ask Jennifer?
Items from council members, Brent?
Nope, nothing.
Karen?
No.
Paul?
The Budget Committee, the ad hoc committee on the budget, I propose that I had a discussion with Councilmember Freeman. We had talked before about making it the middle of the day, and she pointed out, and I had to go, no, that it really makes a lot more sense to do it early so that everybody has most of the day afterwards. So she's off her work at shortly after 9, so if we meet at 9:30, that will work. And the plan is we'll meet at the port offices in their meeting room at 9:30 this Friday. And we'll make plans from there on when and where we'll meet.
Oh, Mayor, I did neglect to say that I do have we do have the Community Development Committee meeting on Friday as well, so I've got two things going on Friday, and that is at 10 a.m.? That's what my calendar says.
10 a.m.
So that budget meeting will have to be short.
Okay,
What time would 9 a.m.?
30 minutes.
9:30.
9:30?
But I could move it to 9.
Why don't we do that?
I could
Oh,
just,
no, it was,
I would only be maybe 10 minutes late.
Why don't we
You
say
could start
9:15?
9:15. All right,
And I'll be-
I'll tell the port.
3 minutes late.
Great.
I'll just be late.
I'll see everybody Friday morning then. Should I go to Starbucks and get coffee, or will
Yes.
people be
As long as
coffee?
it's not a public expense, Paul. As long as it's not a public expense.
It would be a public expense. I love you, but not that much.
Oh, good.
Bring your pot from home. No, we'd be fine then.
It's across the street. We can get our own.
Just tell me what you want.
Anything else besides coffee orders?
Cream and sugar, please.
Chai tea latte, please. I do have a slight correction to what you had mentioned, and thank you for mentioning it. The Washougal School District's long-range facilities planning town hall is Thursday, April 17th. Oh, no, wait, sorry, pardon me, that's over. No, that's coming up. Thursday, April 17th from 6 to 9 at the Washougal High School Commons. So that's coming up.
That's what he had
I'm
announced.
sure that's what I said. Anything else?
Oh, you were talking about curriculum, but they're not going to be talking about curriculum. This is really more about facilities. So
I only go by the letters I get from
Oh,
the
okay.
superintendent, so.
that's fine. I don't have
Dave?
anything else, thank you.
David?
Next Public Safety Committee meeting is the 21st of April at noon, and this one's going to be at the Police Department, and the public is welcome.
Connie Jo?
Yes, I'd like to say, how about the fact that we had I was going to not forget this word. The nice little thing to your right there.
Proclamation?
Proclamation on the grants, on block grants, national situation. Well, here in our Clark County Community Development Block Grant funding, there's an opportunity through two organizations that partner together. One is called ACE and the other is called REACH, and they're not new to the city of Washougal. But this program I just want to bring to you because I hear that as of a week ago, there were 15 spots open, and this is concerning free home repairs for qualifying older adults and people with disabilities. To qualify, you must be 55 years old or have a permanent disability. You must own and occupy your own home within the city limits of Washougal and earn 50% of median family income or less. So I just want to throw that out there. I don't know how many spots are still left after this last week, but that is a wonderful opportunity for people that are 55 years old or have permanent disabilities to have help. They actually list the types of home repairs they'll do for you on this form here. This is the frequently asked questions. There is an application that needs to be submitted. I have all of that stuff, all of that information here on this form. And if you aren't in need, please tell someone that may be. Spread that word around, because let's fill those spots. Let's not let that get satisfied. People in need. Thank you. That's all.
Okay. With that, that brings us to an executive session on two items, litigation and property acquisition.
Public comment?
We did?
We did?
I'm going to estimate 30 minutes for both items total, with no action to follow. So my apologies to the public. If you would, please leave the chambers, and if you care to stick around until we reconvene, hopefully within 30 minutes. The foyer is open.